My wife's coworker gave her a special gift that exposed their affair. I made sure they both got fired from the hospital and kicked her out. Hey everyone, I need some advice on something that's been happening in my marriage. I'm 29 years old, and I've been married to my wife, who's 30, for 7 years now. We have a 5-year-old daughter. Some people say we got married young, and I heard that a lot when we were planning our wedding. But here's the thing, we've known each other since high school, so we had plenty of time to really get to know one another. I thought that was enough to make sure I was making the right choice when I proposed. We were both mature for our ages, at least I thought so. When we were younger, she knew she wanted to go to medical school, and I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always thought we were meant to be. I was running a successful HVAC business before I turned 20, so by the time she started med school, I was in a position to support her financially. If you ask our younger selves, I think they'd be pretty proud of where we've ended up, career-wise at least. But lately, I've started to wonder if there were red flags I missed, or if people just go after what they want no matter how much you care or how hard you try. I've always been committed to my wife. We grew up together, and I thought I knew her better than anyone. But now, I'm not so sure. Let me get straight to the point. My wife graduated medical school and became a general practitioner, which is great. I've never been prouder of anyone. I watched her graduate high school, then university, not once, but twice. I'll be honest, I used to worry that I'd feel less than because of her success. I didn't go to college myself because I knew it wasn't the right path for me. Instead, I used that time to work on building a business, and my hard work paid off. I make good money now, and that feels great. But do I regret not going to college? No, I don't. My wife, the doctor, works at a hospital. And like any workplace, there's drama. She has coworkers she's close to and others she doesn't get along with. The thing is, there's one coworker who started popping up a lot in her stories, let's call him Devin. If you've ever heard of the term work husband, that's how I started feeling about Devin. She's always talking about him. Whenever something happens at work, it's always Devin she's with at lunch. If she feels scared walking to her car late at night, guess who's there to walk her? Devin, of course. She'd even go on about his cats and Chihuahua, showing me pictures that he sent her. At that point, I started getting really suspicious. I'm sure any guy would. It started to feel like Devin was interested in her. So, I asked my wife if he knew she was married. She said he did, and she reassured me that there was nothing to worry about, that Devin was like a brother to her. Now, I've never liked hearing things like, he's like a brother to me. It never sits well with me, but I let it slide. I didn't have anything concrete to base my suspicions on, so I didn't press it. But things didn't stop there. Now, let me give you a bit of background on our sex life. I've never been the type of guy who needs to have sex all the time. Once or twice in 2 weeks was enough for me. And my wife felt the same way. We had a good, harmonious sex life when we first got married. But over time, things changed. Her interest in sex just stopped. We talked about it, and she blamed everything from stress and hormones to exams and her diet. We tried to fix things, but nothing worked. I never blamed her for it, but after a while, it started to affect me. I thought about looking outside the marriage, but I never actually acted on it. Then, one day, my wife came home excited, telling me she wanted to rekindle our sex life. It had been 2 years since we'd had sex more than 5 times, so you can imagine my surprise. I had to ask what made her so eager all of a sudden. She told me that she had talked with people at work about sex, and it sparked some ideas that might help us. I wasn't sure about it. I mean, talking about sex should be normal among doctors, but I never thought that my wife and her coworkers, especially Devin, would be discussing it openly. I asked her who she had talked to, and she said, just Devin and some others. That didn't sit well with me. I knew most of her coworkers by name, but for her to leave the rest of them in an others category didn't sit right with me. She told me they discussed everything from the importance of sex in marriage to sexless marriages, and even sex toys. That last part got my attention. And then she casually mentioned that she had used our marriage as an example in the conversation. To hear that made me pretty upset. I had never been bitter about the sexless situation, but hearing her talk about it publicly, with coworkers who knew me, felt like a violation. So I pushed further, asking her if it was just her and Devin talking about it. She was caught off guard, but denied it at first. She said it was with some of the others, but Devon was there too. I asked her to tell me the truth, and eventually, she admitted that it was just her and Devon. I could feel my anger rising. I wasn't usually this relentless, but this whole thing with Devon had gotten to me. I told her to keep having her sex talks with Devon, the brother she's so close to. I told her I was curious to see how well this unofficial sex therapist could help our marriage. After that, I left the room and slept on the couch that night. A week passed. Things were awkward, but we didn't talk about Devon again, and that was fine with me. I figured it was just workplace stuff. But then one night, my wife came home with a plastic bag that clearly had a long box inside. She seemed nervous, but didn't act too differently. She finally sat down next to me and said, "Remember what we talked about trying to spark things up in the bedroom?" She pulled the box out and revealed a big, purple dildo. It shocked me. I've never had anything against sex toys, but my wife has always been pretty vanilla. I asked her, why do they have to make them so colorful? She seemed relieved that I said something. But then she slipped up, saying, "I don't know why Devon chose the color. Something closer to a skin tone would have been nicer." That did it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stood up and shouted, "Devon bought you a dildo?" She looked shocked, then quickly realized what she had said. I asked her how the person she claims is like a brother to her ended up buying her a sex toy. She tried to explain, saying she was going to buy one anyway, but it saved her some money. That didn't sit well with me. She tried to justify her actions, but I was done. I couldn't hold back my frustration anymore, so I grabbed my car keys and left the house. I spent the night driving around, trying to clear my head. When I got home, I packed her things and set her suitcases by the door. I emailed the hospital, telling them about my concerns regarding employees having sex on the premises. I didn't send the video to her family, but I made sure to let them know what I found out once everything was settled. The next day, I heard back from the hospital. Both my wife and Devon were fired for violating medical ethics. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, even though it hurt. I'm now working with a divorce lawyer, and I'm feeling more at peace knowing that I have proof of everything. My wife will be my ex-wife soon, and while it's painful, I'm glad the truth came out. I appreciate everyone who supported me through all this, and I'm ready to move on with my life. I swore up and down that we just talked. There was nothing more to it. I told her, "I don't think you did anything, unless you're fooling around in the broom closet at work. But I hate how you're sharing our private life with other people. I especially hate that you're doing it with Devon of all people." She got defensive, saying, "Really? So, talking to Devon is the thing that's been causing this sexual deadlock in our marriage? Do you even know what that looks like?" I snapped back at her, "I swear, he's like a brother to me. I've always said it, and I hate that you don't believe me. There's nothing between us, and talking to him about it is just like talking to a friend, or even like talking to a therapist." At that moment, I could feel my rage building up. It was like she was slowly starting to turn things around, making herself the victim. This wasn't the first time this had happened in an argument, but this time it really struck a nerve. I told her, "Before you try to flip this around and make yourself out to be the victim here, fine. Keep having your sexual chats with Devon, the brother you share such a deep connection with. I'm actually curious to see how this unofficial sex therapist can help us out in the bedroom." And with that, I stood up and walked out of the room. I ended up sleeping on the couch that night. Fast forward about a week. The next few days were awkward between us, but we eventually moved past it. I didn't hear anything about Devon, which was a relief. I knew they'd still be interacting at work, but at least I wasn't hearing about him every day, and that was enough for me at the time. I thought things were back to normal, until exactly a week after our big argument. Yesterday, my wife came home holding a plastic bag. I could tell there was a long box inside. She was acting a little strange, but doing her best to seem normal. For about half an hour, she tried to make casual conversation, and I started getting impatient. Finally, she sat down next to me, the way she does when a serious conversation is about to happen. She said, "So, babe, remember what we talked about trying to get our bedroom life active again?" I nodded, and she continued, "I decided to take a leap and get something that I thought could help us out a lot in the bedroom. Or at least help me, because I know I'm the issue." She pulled the box out of the plastic bag, and when she did, it was obvious what it was. There was no hiding it, it was a big, purple dildo. The box clearly indicated it could vibrate. I'm not opposed to sex toys at all. I think they can definitely enhance the experience if used right. But my wife has always been pretty traditional when it comes to that stuff. So, I was a little shocked, but I did my best to stay calm. She pulled the toy out of the box like it was made of glass, holding it carefully. I looked at it, kind of confused. I've never needed toys in my past relationships, things were always fine the natural way. But I get it, everyone's different, and if this was going to help, I wasn't against it. I just muttered, why do they make them so colorful? She seemed relieved that I said something, and that's when she slipped up. I'll never forget it. She said, I know, right? I don't know why Devin chose the color. Something closer to a skin tone would have been nicer. I felt my blood pressure rising. My mind immediately went back to the earlier conversations. My heart was pounding. I couldn't believe she had just said that. She didn't even realize what she'd let slip. I stood up, and without thinking, I said, Devin bought you a dildo? She was taken aback, looking confused for a second, then it seemed like the realization hit her. Her eyes widened in panic as she processed what she'd just said. I shook my head, struggling to find the words. How does the guy you call like a brother end up buying you a sex toy? I just couldn't grasp it. She mumbled something I couldn't hear. I calmly asked her to repeat it, hoping there was some kind of explanation, but she just said, I was going to buy one for us anyway, so it saved us some cash. Her explanation came out in a whisper, and it was clear that she knew how ridiculous it sounded. I didn't even respond to that, because I could see she was just trying to justify her actions. Honestly, I've never felt worse in my life than I did yesterday. I was filled with so much anger and frustration that I needed to release, but I knew I couldn't do it in a way that would be acceptable. I wanted to confront her about Devin, but I knew she'd just deny everything. I could feel myself shaking with rage, so I grabbed my car keys and my wallet, walked out the door, and left. She tried to stop me once, but when I gave her a look, she backed off. I spent the rest of the night driving around town, clearing my head. I ended up getting a hotel room for the night, and I extended my stay the next day too. I'm not sure if I'll go home tomorrow, but I decided to see if I could get some advice from all of you. I have a strong feeling that something's definitely going on between her and Devin, but I want solid proof. Let me know what you think. I'll be in the comments as long as I can. Edit, you don't need to convince me that something's going on between my wife and Devin. I'm not in denial. I just want to make sure I have undeniable proof. That'll help me a lot. Edit 2, yeah, I probably should have kicked her out of the house instead of leaving myself, but I really couldn't stay there long enough to let her pack. I thought it would be better to take myself out of the situation. Edit 3, I've seen some suggestions that I check her phone, and I'm probably going to do that. But I can't do it right away, since she's still on guard. A lot of you have given me some ideas, so I think I'll try contacting some of her coworkers that I'm friendly with. It could backfire, especially if they're more loyal to her than me, but we'll see. Update. Hey folks, it's been a minute, but I've had to be patient, and I hope you all have been too. I've got an update for you, and while it might sound like good news to many of you, it's actually bittersweet for me. After about a week, I finally went back home. My wife apologized over and over, saying that she'd limit her interactions with Devin. I just nodded, acknowledging her apology, but I wasn't fully over it. Still, I knew I needed to be home and in good standing with her to figure out the real depth of what was going on between her and Devin. It took a while for us to get back to being even somewhat civil. I decided to take a bit of a risk and reach out to two of my wife's coworkers who knew me and whom I felt I could trust. One was a guy named Rob, and the other was a woman named Anna. I started with Rob. I figured that, since we were both men, he might feel some loyalty to me and be honest about what he'd seen. I didn't have his phone number, but he was easy to find online, so thanks to LinkedIn for that. I messaged him, explained who I was, and we set up a time to meet at a bar. At the bar, I didn't dive right into talking about Devin. After all, Devin was just another coworker of his. Instead, I casually mentioned that I had some concerns about Devin and asked if he'd noticed anything between the two of them. Rob seemed to think about it for a minute before he told me that my wife and Devin were very close. He didn't have evidence that they were anything more than just close friends at work, but he could see why I had my suspicions, and he sort of felt the same way, even though he wasn't involved directly. I thanked Rob for his honesty. Next, I met with Anna the following day. Women tend to know all the gossip at work, and I knew this could be risky, but I felt like I had little to lose. Anna was an attractive woman, so it made sense why my wife often mentioned her with a bit of annoyance. I assumed it was probably some competitive dynamic between the two of them. My hope was that if my wife didn't like Anna, then maybe Anna wouldn't like my wife and would help me out. Anna looked pained as she started speaking, saying, "I don't know how much you know, but there's definitely something going on between them." She added, "I hate to be the one to tell you this, but the talk around the hospital is that they've been, involved at work, for lack of a better way of putting it." As Anna spoke, I felt a rush of anger, but at the same time, there was a sense of closure. I'd finally been proven right. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't crazy for suspecting that something was going on between my wife and Devon. I thanked Anna for her honesty and went home that night. Once I got home and my wife was asleep, I grabbed her phone. I found her messages with Devon pretty quickly and started scrolling through them. There was nothing in those messages, not even a hint of anything inappropriate. It was all clean, maybe too clean. I even checked her emails and some of her social media accounts, but there wasn't anything suspicious there either. I started doubting myself, thinking I might have blown things out of proportion. But that all changed when I checked her phone's gallery. At first, there were only normal pictures, selfies, clouds she saw on her drives, food she ate, and other random stuff. I was about to close it when, on a whim, I decided to check the trash folder. And that's when I found it. A sex tape. It had been deleted a few days ago, but it was there, clear as day, in her trash. It was a video of my wife, in scrubs, getting intimate with another man in what appeared to be a hospital room. It was unmistakable. Their work romance had gone way beyond flirting. They'd been having sex at the hospital. I was furious. I had to watch a 5-minute video of my wife with another man. I had hoped I wouldn't find anything, that maybe life would go back to normal, but that wasn't the case. That was the worst outcome for someone who wanted to stay in denial, but I'm not the type to stay ignorant. I saved the video to my phone, erased any trace of me having touched her phone, and spent the rest of the night thinking about what to do next. I had the proof I needed, and now it was time to act on it. The next morning, I acted normal as my wife left for work. As soon as she was gone, I packed her things. We'd been living together a long time, so packing up everything she owned in a few hours wasn't easy, but I made sure to grab the essentials. I lined the suitcases up neatly by the door. Then, I wrote an email to the hospital where she worked, explaining my concerns about employees having sexual relations on their property. I detailed the lack of professionalism, the ethical issues, and the sanitary concerns, especially given the context of the hospital room they were in. I'd been running my own businesses for years, so I knew how to phrase it in a way that would grab their attention. I briefly thought about sending the video to her family, but I realized that would be a step too far. I'd tell them what I found out once everything had settled. Later that night, when my wife came home, she saw the suitcases by the door. She walked in, smiling, but that smile faded immediately when she saw what I had done. "I couldn't help myself," I said, surprised. "I don't regret it." I wasn't being cruel, just straightforward. She went into a panic, asking me what was going on. I told her, "You know exactly what you did. You need to leave now. You can come back another time to get the rest of your stuff, but not now." She looked stunned, and I could see tears starting to well up in her eyes. But I didn't feel a bit of pity for her. Save the tears. Go to Devon's. I'm sure he has a nice bed for you to sleep in. You probably won't mind getting cozy with him, even if it's not at work anymore. She started crying, but I was done. It irritated me to watch. I walked over, grabbed 2 of her suitcases, and took them out to her car. When I came back for the last one, I saw her standing by the door, still crying. I took the suitcase, closed the door behind me, and locked it. It took almost 30 minutes, but I eventually heard her car start and drive off. She didn't need to know how I found out, but she couldn't pretend I didn't know. The next day, I heard from the hospital. Both my wife and Devon had been fired. They were let go for violating medical ethics and professionalism. It was satisfying, to say the least. I've also been working with a great divorce lawyer who told me it was smart to have saved the evidence. I added her family to a group message and told them what their perfect daughter had been up to. Then I left the group. I don't need to deal with their drama anymore. She'll be my ex-wife soon, and while it hurts that I spent so many years on a marriage that turned out to be a lie, I'm glad it ended sooner rather than later. Thanks to everyone who supported me through the initial post and stuck around for the update. I'm ready to move on with my life.